kind of was part of the reason that they ended up like stopped being a band. But like they made this album, and I remember talking to the guitar player, and he was like, yeah, he's like, I just feel like I'm not even playing my own music anymore in my own band, you know? So it can be a delicate process for sure. I try to make sure the artist is on, you know, we're on the same page. They're on board with every aspect about it. And so far it's been a solid approach, I think.
Are you listening for anything specific the first time you hear a song, or it's just like...
I think the melody, like, you know, is probably what I hear first. Or I'm a drummer, so I probably tend to like think about what the beat or the groove is going to be, you know, when I'm first hearing it. Yeah, I don't know. It just I think I just try to figure out if it makes me feel something, you know, like if it's inspiring, or like a singer-songwriter that I work with a lot of times, he'll just come in with like a handful of songs that he's been messing around with, and he'll play them all for me. And usually there's one that I'm like, that's the one, like, let's do that one, you know? So
you just shoot from your hip.
Yeah. So it kind of can depend, you know, and some people, it's such an interesting thing. Like the latest thing you wrote is always the best one, you know, like that's how people always are, you know, like, oh, I just,
at least in your mind.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why I always try to, people will write something like, man, I just wrote this song yesterday and I think it's the best thing I've ever written. Like, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's like, well, let's hear everything you got. 'Cause you know, when it's not your song, it's easier to be more objective about it, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I had an experience recently where this guy came to me, he's like, this is the best song ever. I need to record this. Forget the other song we're working on. And it was like not nearly as good of a song as the original song, you know, or the first, like it's just people are biased based on like how they're feeling.
I think I was talking with my buddy about this the other day. Like when people like singer-songwriters have they're doing everything themselves, it's like, it's interesting to see like what they choose to release as like a single or something like that. 'Cause it's like, they're so close to their own music and like the lyrics and stuff that it's like, it's hard to just objectively be like, all right, well, this is the quote unquote hit or the single. It's like the one that's about your cousin or whatever, like, you know, that's probably not the one, even though it means the most to you or something, you know, it's good to have like an outside mind, like sort of be able to like vet, you know?
It's kind of like why we send out to mastering, or ideally send out to mastering, is because at a certain point you've just completely lost all objectivity.
For sure.
And I was like talking to Matthew Garber about that. It's just like, you know, we're the final word. You don't know it. You don't know what's right at this point. You know.
I know, it's so true. And I read something about mastering that has always stuck with me, that mastering is supposed to, like, in a sense, fix any imperfections of your mix. And I've always thought that's so interesting, because like people who master their own mixes, like if that's sort of the point of mastering, is to like kind of fill in the gaps of like what's missing in it or where it needs to be. Like if you're mastering that yourself, you know, like you need a third party to hear those things that you're not hearing, you know?
Yeah, you should have gotten it at the mix stage at that point. It's definitely like the master. I mean, I'm guilty of like self-mastering and probably just making it worse because of that.
Yeah, I've definitely mastered a few things, but anytime that it's something that I've been recording and mixing and it's going to be like an actual like release, I always have Matt Garber do it. He's been my guy.
And the tracks that you send me sound amazing. Let's actually dive into that a little bit, because I was listening to a lot of the tracks that you sent me over before we got on this interview, and I loved your band, Human Resources. It was really cool. I actually sent it out to a few friends of mine. Like, what went into that record that you sent me, like production wise? Like I was hearing a lot of Tama Impala, influences and stuff like that. But it just sounded really good and just like really rich.
We were actually really into the war on drugs while we were making that album, I think.
Oh, someone commented back, oh, it sounds a bit like the war on drugs to me.
Yeah, I think like, a deeper understanding had just come out, and that album to me is sonically just like one of the best sounding things. Like I just love the way that album sounds. So I think that was pretty inspiring to me, just from like the sonic approach to it, that album. And of course, Tame Impala's records sound incredible too. That was an interesting album to make, because it started in my apartment before I had my old studio space, and we tracked it just, you know, like in my living room, most of it. And then we finished it in my old studio that I moved into a couple years ago, and mixed it over there. So it was a little bit of a hodgepodge of like where it was recorded and how, and some here, some there. Some stuff was, you know, from the demo and that we kept it, and some stuff was, you know, totally retracked, of course. And it was an interesting, very like I think modern way to do it. Like you just sort of record when and where you can, you know. Like I rented a storage unit at one point that I had my studio in like before years ago, and some stuff was recorded in there. You know, we just kind of did what we needed to do. You know,
that's awesome. And there was another record that was, oh man, let me just pull it up real quick. What was it? It was the one with the dog on the album cover.
Oh yeah, 87 Nights.
87 Nights. Yeah, that was super like Black Keys vibes.
For sure.
Super cool.
And that's a band that I met them from them playing at the Royal American, and that was they're a super young band. They were like still in college, I think, and they just would pack the place out every time they played. And they were actually one of the first bands that I approached. I was like, hey, like I don't ever do this, but like I love y'all. I think that you guys have something special. They were like a pretty new band, so they didn't have any recordings yet. I was like, I want to record you guys and like make a record with you. And just based on their sound and style and like the way that they play, that was one that we just didn't. I tracked it all live, them playing together, and I don't think we'd even used a click for that one. It was just like just get a great take and go, you know.
Wow.
And I definitely like with their sound, I definitely kind of wanted it to sound like an old school record, like a little bit raw, rough around the edges. Like I was like, I wanted it to kind of sound like the Rolling Stones, like in the '60s or something like that, you know, like.
So how did you go about doing that? Was it about like how you mic the drums? Was it about like post-processing, mixing?
Yeah, the drums, I'm pretty sure in the mix, I mainly just used like the kick, snare top, and like mono overhead, you know, like pretty minimal mics on the drums, tube mic for the vocal. I just put like tape machine emulation like on everything.
Yeah, sure.
Just saturation and like tape sound, you know? Yeah, and then like little things like if there was a little amp hiss or like, you know, a little bit of, I didn't suck out all the, like, you know, every little quote unquote imperfection. For that record, that kind of stuff I think helps add to the character and the vibe.
Yeah, I think that's something I still struggle with is like, you know, embracing imperfection and not like being a perfectionist and letting like sounds be a little bit more raw and a little bit more aggressive and more, I don't know. Yeah,
there's something that's awesome about it. I mean, nowadays we can make recordings like quote unquote perfect, you know, like the technology is there to like your vocal can be perfectly tuned, the drums are perfectly in time. And there's certain styles of music where that's completely necessary. But like for this band that's just sort of like a rowdy rock and roll band, it was like, you know, it's okay if it pushes and pulls a little bit, like if it feels right, you know?
Sure. So do you have any practices to stay fresh and creative in the studio space? Like we all get through like the doldrums and stuff like that.
Something that I've been terrible about doing historically that I'm trying to be better at moving forward is to like actually just take a day off, maybe once a week or something, like giving myself like a Sabbath, so to speak, you know, like a day of like.
You don't take a Sabbath.
I'm really bad about just like trying to make it work. Like I was saying earlier, like some bands can only work on the weekend or something like that. So I'll just do like, we'll do like Friday night and like all day Saturday and Sunday or whatever. And then, and also, you know, I run live sound, normally when things are, you know, concerts are happening. So usually my weekends are like Friday, Saturday night or Thursday, like I'm running sound at a venue. So if someone's like, oh man, like I can only record on Sunday, like, can we do it? Like if I'm free, I'll, you know, do it. But I definitely,
so you're like full-time grinding kind of thing.
Yeah, it can depend. I definitely like last like January, I got to a point where I could tell I was like I was pushing the throttle a little too hard and like starting to like, it's like, man, like I'm doing what I love to do for a living, but like I'm not even excited about going and doing it right now. Like I needed to like kind of pump the brakes for a minute, which I think is a super important thing. Like you just to keep your head on straight, you know, like you don't want to go so hard and for so long to where like I don't know, like I wasn't even sure if I was like making the right choices or, you know what I mean? Like it's good to take a step back and
you're so fatigued.
Yeah. So,
what did you do? You took a break?
I tried to, and then of course my schedule filled up, you know? So honestly, I mean, with this whole like quarantine thing, like I've been fortunate to still be able to mix and stuff, but it's kind of been a little bit nice to have like a little bit slower pace for a bit, just to sort of like, you know, breathe and sort of like, I could tell I wasn't spending enough time like reflecting on things or like, you know, having like growth thoughts, you know what I mean? And things like that. I was just kind of going. So that's something I'm moving forward. I'm definitely trying to like maintain a sense of like work-life balance and things like that, you know?
Yeah. I feel like you need a little bit of boredom sometimes in your life to take a minute and think about the important, bigger issues and the bigger thoughts.
Yeah, for sure.
I've certainly been enjoying a little bit of a break from the regular like craziness of life. Like, I mean, life is still crazy, but I'm not, and don't get me wrong, I wish I had more work in quarantine, but it's like, oh, it's just like kind of like nice to like for a season to kind of just be a little bit, you know what I mean?
For sure. It's so healthy, I think, for like your mind and everything. Like everything is so like go and like fast paced now, you know. It's like it's kind of been
the
nice.
Whole world is
it's
like a rat race that like it's funny, like I think about it, like I thought about it before this whole thing started. It's like, can you ever really stop this rat race? And then like all of a sudden like a pandemic happens and boom, like everything comes to a halt.
I think my silver lining that I'm trying to think about is like, I feel like real big change only happens when something like epically catastrophic, occurs. And so I think that there might be some, in an optimistic way, like some benefits to like what this is kind of meant for people and what we're having to adapt to and things like that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think about it. I actually talked about it. I did like a little solo cast about my silver lining thoughts about the COVID-19 situation a few episodes ago. And I really think like, the world is going to realize, we're in this together, like we only have one planet, like cheesy stuff, but like important things that like we're all on the same spaceship, you know what I mean? And and this coming to this full halt, I think really gives time to think about what's really important long term, as a species and as like a community. I don't know, global community.
For sure.
So cheesy. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right though. I mean, it's like when you think about it on this global scale, it's like everyone's your neighbor, It's like,
yeah.
I remember when it was happening it was only in China. It was like, oh man, that's crazy. It's happening over there. And then like next thing you knew, it was like, it popped up in like Seattle. And it was like, I remember that day it was like, oh man, that's crazy. Like it's here, but like it's way over there on the West Coast. Like it surely it won't. And then like a couple days later, it's just like everywhere, It's nuts.
Yeah, so it's the air travel and the way I don't want to go down a history road too far because that's the wrong podcast, but like even the 1918 flu like got everywhere pretty quickly.
Yep.
So it's just like human interaction that's just how we work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So tell me a bit about how you're dealing with COVID and like what kind of mixing projects are coming through. Are they old mixing projects? Are they new mixing projects? Yeah, how are you going about doing that?
I got fairly lucky that I just had finished tracking like a 10-song full-length album with a band like right before this all happened. So I was able to dive into mixing that record like for the first portion of when this all started. And so that album is actually currently being mastered by Matt Garber as we speak.
All right. From Matt to Matt.
Yeah. And then I also, like the timing worked out where a project that I was slated to mix just came, like right after that. And then there's a couple other things that I've been able to work on. So it's all new stuff. Been working on new songs with my band. We're in our quarantine bubble together. So it's been kind of nice to just like make new music. And I've actually also been helping the church that I run sound at do like socially distanced recordings of the music that they upload into their like online service stream. So
wow, that's so cool.
That's been kind of nice, like weekly, like gig, to continue to be able to do. It's like a minimal setup for the band and record like 5 songs, and I mix those, and so that's been a cool way to kind of keep that going too.
Wow. So crazy. What are your thoughts like on mixing? Like, do you have a philosophy, approach? Do you use templates? Like, you've got some really cool sounds on those records that I heard. So I'd love to hear what you're doing.
Chris Lord Algae, actually, I watched a video of his on YouTube that his mixing philosophy is something that I have adapted, and it was a huge thing for me. I used to pan, and his approach is like with panning, it's either hard left, hard right, or dead in the center. And
right, LCR mixing.
Yeah. And once he explained why he does that, I do this now for like 98% of stuff. Like I used to always pan, like if it was like 2 guitar tracks, like one like halfway left and one like halfway right. But I realized that if you pan something like a little bit